Welcome to the latest Motley Fool scoreboard. I'm on in Chalk and Blue, and we've got longtime fools Dan Kaplinger and Jason Hall giving a 1 to 10 rating to the company that's all in on Bitcoin. It's MicroStrategy, ticker symbol MSTR. Talk about the business first, rating the strength of it versus, with industry and competition. A 10 is invincible, a 1 is hopeless. Jason's got a 2, Dan's got a 3. Go ahead, Jason.
So I want to be clear too. I own Bitcoin. I own multiple crypto assets. But the question about business, I think, is really critical here because MicroStrategy has become a leveraged commodity trading company. It's built on financing and not cash flows. Its cash flows have fallen from over $100 million a year to now negative operating cash flow. Most of the debt is convertible. So that leverage is not necessarily an existential threat to the company, but it is an existential threat to shareholders on the way down. It's the other side of leverage that is a massive, massive risk in the way the business has been structured.
Yeah, once upon a time, MicroStrategy software business really made up the bulk of the company, but now it's minimal at best. The Bitcoin ownership, call it business in air quotes, I don't really see the competitive advantage. I mean, I can go buy Bitcoin. So it really, from a business standpoint, I'm not really quite sure what the MicroStrategy wrapper does that any other company that's well capitalized could match if it wanted to.
Yeah, if I'm bullish on Bitcoin, I want to just buy Bitcoin, not put it up into something else. Let's talk about management. A 10 is Warren Buffett. A 1 is Homer Simpson. Jason's going with a 6.5 because he loves that extra decimal place. Dan's got the 6. We'll start with the extra decimal. We'll reward it.
So if MicroStrategy can make a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference in their investor presentation, I can make a Spinal Tap reference here. If you were just judging by the stock price, Saylor is an 11, right? But we really have to think about permanent creation of value or durable creation of value. Stock prices rocketed higher on momentum and Bitcoin's price rise. There's not a structural business necessarily underpinning its value. And then again, factored in that use of leverage, that convertible debt, there's a big risk that the value that's been created is temporary and gets diluted away when shares convert if it coincides with the inevitable Bitcoin downturn that we get every few years.
That's ironic. Michael Saylor, in many ways, ahead of his time, focusing on business intelligence before really the data revolution came about. If he'd been able to execute on that business, I think that, MicroStrategy might be a lot more influential even than it is right now. But instead, Saylor decided to kind of jettison the business intelligence side to favor Bitcoin cryptocurrency. He's done a really good job playing his hand there. He's used his leadership skills. He's a huge influencer in the space, and he's used all of the business tools at his disposal to move forward with that vision. That's why I'm willing to give Saylor a reasonably good score with management. The question is whether that is going to pan out to a viable business, and that I think is reflected in other scores.
Yeah, part of the business of a CEO is marketing. He does that pretty well. Let's talk about financials. 10 is a fortress, a 1 is yikes. Jason's at a 2, Dan's at a 3. We'll start with Dan.
Again, looking at the operating business segment, what's left of that business intelligence unit, flat revenue, earnings, you can't really look at the income statement anymore because those earnings move up and down with the value of the Bitcoin holdings and the mark-to-market provisions. As Jason mentioned, levering up to some extent, yes, it's convertible debt, but it is still debt. And so it's just a really dicey looking balance sheet at this point. It's just a business, a business that hinges almost entirely on the strength or weakness of Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, there's not really much to add besides, it looks incredible on the way up, right? And you say, well, the balance sheet also has Bitcoin, which is massively valuable, but it's also massively volatile. And that creates just enormous risk that, again, that everything Dan said about the operating business that just can't offset that risk.
I was reading something from a bullish analyst who was upping his MicroStrategy price target one day. And even he was kind of like, well, it's got a really robust underlying business. I value that at 2% of my valuation. And you're like, oh, okay. Even the bull's like, it's all a Bitcoin play. Let's talk about valuation, right? Because hey, if the stock keeps going up, maybe it's interesting. Dan, how well will MicroStrategy stock do over the next 5 years? And how safe is it? Keeping in mind a 10 is a sure thing and a 1 is a lottery ticket.
I gave MicroStrategy negative returns over the next 5 years. I gave it a safety score of 2. It's a leveraged investment. And so if Bitcoin keeps rising, this will probably rise more. But keep in mind, MicroStrategy itself is kind of betting against its stock price in the sense that it's been doing recurring stock offerings. It's been doing this convertible debt. It raises cash. It uses that cash to buy more Bitcoin. Right now, the share price about 2.5 times the implicit value of the underlying Bitcoin on its balance sheet. As long as it can maintain that premium to what I'll call net asset value, it makes sense for MicroStrategy to keep issuing stock and buying Bitcoin with it. And so even if Bitcoin goes up, if the combination of investor rationality and the company's own stock sales results in that premium going away, you could get reasonably good future performance from Bitcoin and still see the stock price go down. And that's what I think eventually is going to happen. Whether it happens in 5 years or not, that's another question. But I think it's out there in the future at some point.
Yeah, so Dan and I had the same score, and largely for the same reasons. I think binary outcome. This is probably the most binary outcome stock that I've talked about on Scoreboard. I want to just put some numbers behind the valuation and the things Dan was talking about. This is about 6 weeks old, so it's changed a little bit, but probably not necessarily in favorable ways. 252,000 Bitcoin owned as of October 29th. It's about $100,000 today. That's $25 billion in value. I checked the market cap end of day before we recorded this, $85 billion roughly market cap. Where's the other $60 billion in value? That's an enormous premium for what is essentially a Bitcoin play. And again, the idea, yeah, this is a leverage bet. So you want to create more value than just the rise in price of Bitcoin, but it can get really ugly, and it probably will get really ugly at some point. What it looks like exactly 5 years from now, I don't think there's a lot of value on a per share basis created. It's going to be a heck of a roller coaster, though. That's for sure.
Honestly, I think calling it a binary outcome gives binary outcomes a bad name. That's like a pharmaceutical. Well, if the drug trial goes good, it's to the moon. If not, it goes to zero. This one, I don't see how it works out unless, kind of like a GameStop type of thing where it's like, hey, we're going to just put up a bunch of shares and then take it in and just hold it as cash instead of buying Bitcoin. That's the opportunity when you have overpriced shares, but not really a underlying business. My 2 cents. Let's go to Top It. I'm sure you guys have other stocks you like better than MicroStrategy. What do you have, Dan?
So I kind of broke it up into 3 buckets. If you like Bitcoin, you want Bitcoin exposure directly, I'm good with an ETF like the iShares Bitcoin Trust. You've got all these spot ETFs now available on the market. You can get direct Bitcoin exposure. If you want kind of operational leverage on top of cryptocurrencies, Coinbase, I think, has done a good job, ticker COIN, of kind of leveraging that. I think you're going to get some exposure to crypto that way. It's going to be tied to the value of Bitcoin and other cryptos, but not entirely, because there is an operational element. If you like MicroStrategy for its business intelligence, why not just go with a business intelligence company? It's kind of ridiculous because I think that, I could do a whole other show about this, but even like a Palantir that's gotten so much hype and attention, at least has really focused on business intelligence and doesn't have this crypto thing.
Dan, nobody's buying MicroStrategy for its business intelligence. That's hilarious. All right. All I can say is, yeah, just if you're interested in Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin, dollar cost average into it, avoid the risk, avoid the leverage blow up. If you're bullish on crypto as an asset class and the potential for businesses, Coinbase, same thing. Dollar cost average into it, same thing. It's extremely expensive right now, but it's a wonderful business, an actual business, not just a trading house.
Thank you to both Jason and to Dan. They've given MicroStrategy a miserable overall score of 2.9 out of 10. Believe it or not, that's not the lowest score ever. That's CVS, where we gave it a 2.4. I still disagree vehemently with how low that score was, just on the basis that, unlike something like MicroStrategy, it's primarily built on real businesses, not leveraging Bitcoin or something like that. Look out for a new scoreboard every market day at 7 p.m. Eastern. Next up is CrowdStrike. Till then, Fool on.